Hello and welcome to the latest episode of FUMO, Future Money, the podcast brought to you by CFT, sponsored by XVC Tech, and supported by the MENA FinTech Association. I'm your host today, Ronit Ghosh, zooming in. We're recording this from Geneva. I've got my special guests zooming in from two other parts of the world. Welcome, Erik, zooming in from LA, and Teana from London.
Hello.
Hi, Ronit.
Thanks for
Thanks for
joining
having
us. Thanks for joining us, guys. And unusually, I'm flying solo. My co-host Gaurav is not with us today, so I'm going to try to be two people in one. Erik, Teana, for the audience who shockingly may not know you, give them a TLDR about who you are and what you do, and also how you got into. Before we talk about Venice and we talk about your latest project and your latest business, how did you guys both get into crypto? I mean, Tina, obviously, you and I have met many times in your previous incarnations. Erik, I think we met once in an event in Switzerland, but we don't really know each other that well. But Erik, why don't we start with you? Tell us a little bit about, and we're just going to assume the audience is a general audience and not really crypto geeks, so obviously all will know you.
Yeah. Well, so I've been way down the rabbit hole in the crypto world since 2011, back when Bitcoin was the whole thing, and fell in love with it as a way to create a form of money that was objective, open, transparent, and unstoppable. And to me, that was clearly like one of the most important and powerful technologies ever created. And so I just fell in love with it. And I've been building companies in that world ever since. So most people know me for founding a company called Shapeshift, which was a digital asset exchange. And a couple of years ago, we decentralized that, which is a whole different topic. And I recently got very interested in the AI world, and in particular, how to build AI systems which, like Bitcoin, were permissionless and open and objective and beyond, the ability to be captured by any single entity. So that's where my passion lies, and that's a quick background.
Awesome. Thanks, Erik. Tina?
Yes. So, as you know, I'm a reformed banker. And in 2017, after kind of being on a hamster wheel, looking at blockchain projects to help streamline things like shipping and payments and capital market settlement, it occurred to me that the real innovation was really the open source Rails, not, potentially closed loop consortia blockchains that we were playing with in banking. So I joined the blockchain space in 2017, and like Erik, have worked for a couple of large exchanges. I've also spent quite a lot of time with policymakers around the world talking about what governance models might look like, and helping to shape some of those legislative and regulatory proposals that we're now seeing come to market. So yeah, that is kind of a little bit of my background. I think that the main reason that the decentralized, let's just say the decentralized space attracted me was, post 2008, and the, kind of financial crisis. I knew a lot of people that lost their jobs. I knew a lot of people that had experienced, a real impact personally to their, financial well-being. And some of those people are still experiencing those impacts today. And for me, it just raised a lot of questions about our relationship with money, and our relationship with government, and how those things work together. And I just felt like a number of the projects that I were working on professionally were based on access. So access for underbanked people, for example. And these things just weren't really working. So for me, the crypto space afforded opportunities for sovereign wealth creation, the ability to create capital in new and interesting ways that seemed more equitable, and provided greater access for people to actually live their financial lives in a bit more transparent way uh,
Mm,
than they had been able to previously. So when you translate, the ability to transact with the, ability to gain knowledge, I think those same tenets should apply to things like
mm.
AI.
Thanks for that introduction, guys. And Erik, Venice.ai, to walk us through like the germination of the idea. When did you start noodling around and say, I want to do something in this space? And how did you get to that point? You've done a lot in the previous decade, and you're very well known in the crypto space. Why fuse the two?
Yeah, well, so I have zero background in AI or machine learning or any of the like interesting, sophisticated engineering stuff that actually makes
Mm,
the systems work. So I have to approach it with a bit of humility in that regard. But what I do understand is permissionless systems and why they're useful. And when I started playing around with the major AI platforms, ChatGPT, et cetera, it's an absolutely incredible product. I think everyone who's used it got a sense of magic and wonder from that,
mm,
right? And um, absolutely one of the coolest suites of technologies that has ever been created. And and yet, under the surface, I was worried about a few major things. So when you have a discussion with an AI, what you think is happening is that you're talking to a machine, and the machine is answering you based on your queries. What is actually happening today is that you're getting back some amalgam of machine intelligence and human bias. And I don't mean the bias that goes into like training the models, which is a hard thing to get rid of, but the bias that is consciously imbued into the answers. So that when the answers come back to you, you're actually getting a combination of what the machine is telling you from statistical inference and what
mm,
humans want you to think for any number of reasons, ranging from benign to virtuous to corrupt. And that felt a little weird to me because you can't really tell what you're talking to. And some of the answers really feel, I'd say, paternalistic. Like you can tell that the machine is trying to like scold you or guide you in certain directions. Some of the answers feel very much like propaganda. Some of them are just kind of creepy. And so that was just bothering me for a while. I didn't really know how to stop it.
mm,
Um, and then the other issue I realized was that everything that I was saying was going to a centralized company, stored
mhm,
forever. The answers that are coming back to me stored forever, all of it tied to my identity.
mm,
So if you fast forward, multiple years, the companies providing these chatbots have what can be like pretty intimate, deep understanding of their users.
oh,
This
totally.
is yeah, and this is dangerous, right? It's dangerous not just because like they might advertise to you,
Yeah,
that might be annoying, but not the end of the world.
yeah.
Um, but if a hacker gets that stuff and pulls it
Mm,
out, that's extremely dangerous. If a government gets that stuff and pulls it out,
mm,
that's extremely dangerous. Um, so those things really bothered me, and as I started thinking about this stuff, I realized that like it didn't have to work that way. You could actually use a lot of the really cool machine intelligence without those kind of creepy Orwellian aspects,
mm,
and that had to be done largely with an open source foundation.
mhm,
Open source LLMs, open source AI models, 2, 3 years ago were far behind what the big centralized companies were doing, but now they're at least comparative. So we built Venice basically to provide the good parts of that experience, being able to chat with a machine intelligence and have all those
mm,
wonderful, interesting, insightful conversations, but without you being spied on,
mm.
and without us censoring the information and basically trying to shape the conversation to the user. So that's the genesis of this.
So, um, so is it fair to say that it's a is it what, like Q4 2022, and you're sitting around playing with ChatGPT and having like we all did wow moments. And I know there's a time in I think November or December where various friends and colleagues of mine said, just can you just stop playing with that and like get back to doing something else? And because I'd keep doing things on ChatGPT and then sharing it with friends and like
Yeah.
stupid things like I think very very stupid things, not very value add. There was actually some of it was pretty eye-opening because I would ask it questions that in my career I've been a financial analyst, and I'd ask you questions that I would basically have been thinking about 10, 20 years ago, and it would give me answers. And I was thinking, I still get paid to do this. And this machine is basically telling me, whatever it is. You could put in any kind of random question about a business or a company or a market and an asset. And I guess we all did it. And then, but how do you go from that to saying, like, how did actually the process work? Was it you and a bunch of friends thinking about it? Are you just staring into the Pacific Ocean? Like, how do you get to the I want to build something?
Um,
What
I
was the
was talking
eureka moment? The Archimedes running out of the bathtub eureka moment?
yeah, I was talking with a friend who was telling me about a decentralized AI inference protocol called
Mm-hmm.
Morpheus.
Mm-hmm.
Morpheus was just getting started, and basically what Morpheus was trying to solve was um, how do you incentivize a bunch of decentralized nodes that are running GPUs or the hardware that powers the AI? How do you incentivize a bunch of decentralized nodes to contribute that power to an AI system?
Mm-hmm.
And there's a number of projects trying to do this, but that's the one that I started looking at. And I realized I could help contribute to that because I understood a lot of the token economics of these systems. And I realized that like if that piece gets solved, that's the hardest part because all the other parts are just kind of an open source stack that you can build with relatively little effort. We as in Venice use open source LLMs. We use lots of open source software. We use various SaaS services to build a product that is fast and easy and feels very much like ChatGPT in many of the meaningful ways. But the hard part is making sure that the actual computation doesn't come from any single centralized company. And so
Mm-hmm.
when I learned about the Morpheus project doing that and realized I could contribute to that, then it clicked for me and I realized like, okay, the whole stack can now get built. No one's done it yet. This is important to me, so I will build it.
Got it. Uh, Moving over to Tina. Tina, you said in one of the I think in one podcast I was listening to recently where I think you used the phrase that you've told in the past you've told Eric whatever you do next, and if I'm free I'm going to come and work with you or something like that. Can you just recount again that anecdote about like what was the kind of blank check you wrote Eric in terms of I'll come and work with you, and why like what drew you, like why the enthusiasm?
Yeah, well, so Eric mentioned that he's been in the space since 2011. And so when I first came across Bitcoin, there weren't a lot of people in Bitcoin, and there certainly weren't a lot of people that were, um, working with Bitcoin professionally. And so one of the people that Eric used to work with, Charlie, was kind of a personality, right? And he was one of the few people that, the company that they worked at together, was one of the few places that you could buy Bitcoin unless you were going to set up an account at Mt. Gox yourself, right? And so I had seen what they were doing when I didn't really understand. Like I understood Bitcoin, but I kind of thought, I don't really know. Like I didn't get it. I'll be honest. I didn't get it at first. Um, and then, kind of by the time I did, some other things had happened in the market, and that company had changed, and they had kind of moved their own ways, and Eric was doing something else. But every time there was a pivotal kind of moment, where it was either a regulatory challenge or a new way of working with these assets, or when Shapeshift decentralized into a DAO. Like Eric has been at the forefront of this industry from the beginning. And, I don't want to fangirl my boss too much, but, he's a very clever guy with an incredibly high standard of integrity. And so, yeah, I did. I said to him a couple of years ago, what are you going to do next? And he said, I don't know. And I said, well, whatever it is, please tell me, keep me in mind, because I would like to work with you and learn from you. Um, and what I didn't know then was what that thing would be, and how incredibly passionate I would be about it already, and how I had already been kind of having a lot of not quite the same concerns as Eric, but they're certainly aligned, right? And the idea that we're leaning into receiving information, and that can potentially seriously influence how we think,
Mm,
um, from sources that may purport that they're telling you the truth,
yep.
but the truth, what's the truth, right? The truth according to whom? And so to me, it felt like there was this like convergence of technology, this rapid evolution of how we were exchanging and obtaining information that felt like it was just this train that had left the station on a high speed. And I felt like there was, something that somebody should do something, right, to
Mm,
ensure that people had access to the closest level of engagement with data that hadn't been adulterated. And I think for me, like the one of the big things that happened in the last couple of months, I was really struck by when Gemini launched, and there was
mhm.
that weekend where you couldn't get the model to produce an image of a Caucasian person, no matter what you asked. And I just thought, wow, this is so stark. I mean, this is a really stark example
Yeah.
of, something that's been fiddled with to a degree,
Um,
right? And it just made
um,
me wonder, like, what else is being fiddled with?
um,
So yeah.
no, it's kind of raises. I've been discussing this with friends and industry counterparts in recent days. How and you're both American, or Tina, you've lived abroad now, but if you live outside America, in the non-China world, let's just say in the rest of the world, we have these models. I mean, and we know I'm saying this from the perspective of someone who's quite a fan of the US, but the way we the way we think is going to be shaped by a small number of companies in a small number of locations on the West Coast or the Northwest coast of the US. And it's kind of like if you get to the sort of, you know, I don't know how far I want to go down the permissionless rabbit hole, but in terms of heterogeneity, I quite like the idea of having heterogeneity of views and inputs. And it does worry me that we're going to head down a world, even if it's from the best of intentions in Seattle or in various parts of the valley. They might have the best of intentions, but um, we're getting into a world where, yeah, not only does Microsoft have my data on a cloud, they're basically going to be helping me think every day in a very nice, efficient,
Well,
friendly way. But they're
now
going to be,
they want to take screenshots of you working every 30
yeah,
seconds, right? Why
yeah,
not?
and it's kind of, yeah. If you're sitting, and I mean, I'm doing this from Europe, but normally I'm sitting in the Middle East, and it's kind of I quite like the idea of having a world where you have lots of different choices. You know, I don't have to have vanilla ice cream, right? I want to have multiple flavors of ice cream. But anyway, I don't want to go down a philosophical rabbit hole, but let's talk about how the product actually works. And so again, I've not seen Venice. I've not got my hands on the beta model, but Eric, how does the product actually so we know how like GPT-4 or ChatGPT or how these products work. So if I had the product in my hand, am I on a phone? Am I on a laptop? Am I on both? Just walk me through how does a product work?
Yeah, so anyone can use it immediately without an account at Venice.ai. And you could access it either from a web browser on your computer or from a mobile phone. works the same in both. And it feels just like a normal AI chat app, very familiar
Mm,
to someone that has used ChatGPT, for example. You can use it to have a text conversation, or you can create images with it, or you
mm,
can have it create code for you.
mm,
Um, and you can analyze documents that you upload to it. So those are kind of the four main areas of functionality. And in some ways, it works very similar to what like a chat GPT would do, where you send in a message, an
mm,
AI model processes that message and gives a response back. The difference is that your message is not kept on Venice's servers.
mm-hmm.
So what you say is only stored in your own browser. So you
Okay.
have a great degree of privacy there. And two, the model is not censored by Venice. We don't add any like um, paternalistic um, points, or like we don't skew the answers into something that we think is more politically correct, or we don't,
Mm,
like you can use the app and you can write something that's offensive. And frankly, I
mm,
think that's an important litmus test. Like if a system, if you can't
yeah.
talk to a machine intelligence and get it to say something offensive, what else can't you get it to say? Like it
Mhm.
is it is already curating your experience to a large degree.
Mm,
Um, and I don't think companies should be in the habit of treating adults like children,
mm,
right? Like there's a time and place for curating messages. Certain people should not have certain messages sometimes. I get that. But an adult that wants to opt into exploring the world with their own mind should
mm,
be able to do that.
mm,
So that's really like the premise that we're building the whole thing on. And because we've set up the important infrastructure in a decentralized way, um, it is a project which will become increasingly permissionless over time. It's not based in any single jurisdiction. It does not rely on any single model. And if we needed to decentralize Venice someday, there's ways we could even do that. So yeah, that's the quick overview.
So when I'm interacting with it as a user, it's like ChatGPT in terms of the interface on a phone or a mobile app, or it's an app on a phone or on a computer. Um, you said the data sits in the device, not at not at a server in home base, but what sits behind the app? As in, am I accessing a range of different open source models? Am I accessing one model?
Yeah, good question. We provide a few different open source models. So in the world of open source AI, it's a very chaotic and noisy space. There
Right.
are thousands of models for lots of different things. We basically find like the few that are kind of cutting edge and general purpose, and we make those few available in the app. So a user can choose between a few models, but not between thousands.
Right.
And for most people, for 98% of the stuff they need, that works just great.
And today or in the near future, how many models are there that we can access through your app?
Today, there are 3 text models and 3 image models.
Right. And how do you choose these models? Is it Eric and his wise men and women go out and find these, or
Yeah, kind of.
how does that process work?
And they change, like even
Yeah.
even through development. Like we just launched, I don't know, a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago, and we already changed one of the models once. This is like a very fast moving space, so we have to keep on
Mhm.
top of things. But from the text angle, the best models are all derived from Meta's Llama 3 model. So the Facebook company they really deserve a lot of credit for releasing like the best open source LLM in the world. And then other companies take that model and fine tune it in different directions. So we use a version called the Noose Hermes 2 Llama 3, and that's the one that we find to be super performant,
Hmm.
super powerful. Yeah.
Um, why why not just, if I'm a user, go to an open source model directly? Why go through Venice?
It's just about user experience. So people can definitely go access open source models,
Yeah.
but it takes some time and some effort. Not a ton, like a moderately competent person can spend an afternoon setting up some stuff on their own computer,
Right.
and that's great. So they can do that. But what I've learned in my world is like when you can make something just a little easier,
Sure.
you can actually get like 1,000x the usage of it,
Right.
right? Like 30% easier thing can have 10x the number of users. And this is
Right.
a sort of a counterintuitive thing. Um, like the same principle applied when I built Shapeshift. It was a super easy website where you just arrive, you choose one coin, you choose another, you send in that
Mm.
one, and you get the first. And people would mess it when I announced it and released it. Some people would be like, "Hey, Eric, that's kind of cool, but like, I don't get it. Like, I can already use other exchanges. Like,
Yeah.
what's?" And the entire purpose of it was just to reduce the friction that someone had in the process already. And
Mm.
people underestimate the importance of friction and ease of use. And so I just pay attention to that.
And I think that when you look at, emerging technologies, and it's certainly something that we've seen in the crypto space, we've talked about this before, you know, a lot of the really cool things that you can do are still really hard to use.
Mm.
And so when you look at the adoption curve, you're always going to have, the early adopters and the people that are willing to test things and
Mm.
experiment, stand in line at the Apple store to get the latest thing, right? But the majority of people don't do that, right?
Mm.
And so if things aren't easy, then I think that people tend to shy away. The general behavior, humans don't really love change. They don't really.
Mm.
So to try new things and get comfortable with new things, I think takes a level of curiosity, time, effort, that maybe people just don't have to spend. So if you
Mm.
can extract away all of the coordination of, or, I remember the very first time I looked on the Hugging Face website, which is where open source models, kind of aggregate. Um, and I said to Eric, I don't know what I'm looking at, right? I mean, it was like a sea of information. And so, if you're a newbie and you want to set up your own, personal AI, you can certainly do that. The other thing is that some of the models are big, right? And so you just might not be able to download the size of these models onto
Mm.
your, Mac Pro. So we give access also to some larger models that would be cumbersome for an individual to be running on their, individual machines. But I think that abstraction, taking that kind of technology friction out of the mix means that it's easier for people to feel confident with playing with the new technology.
Yeah,
And, and
it's
Tina,
also clear that
oh, go
people
on.
don't. It's clear that like everyone kind of says they care about privacy. Like if you just ask someone like, do you care about privacy? Most people will be like, yeah, I want to be private
Oh,
generally. But people's own behaviors demonstrate kind of the opposite. They'll
sure.
they'll go almost every time for just whatever's easier.
Yeah.
Um, this is why everyone uses Gmail when there's zero privacy to it, right? Google has all of your emails ever, uh, but it's just easy. And so we realized with Venice that if we actually want to bring privacy to the AI space,
Mm.
um, we we can lead with that as our message, but
Yeah.
like the UX has to be as good or better than the leading companies.
And so what you're selling is ease of use and UX and frictionless, and I get all of that. And where does as you sort of look forward in maybe a 12 months, 18 months time, how many how big is the range of models I'm going to have access to? Is this like just having, will it be always three or four or five curated, selected models, or will it be you expect to see, I don't know, dozens or more? Does it
We
matter? I don't know.
I don't think we quite know the answer to that. Like we're gonna listen to our users.
Mm.
My instinct is that we don't need to have lots and lots of models,
Right.
um, one or a few, and just make sure that they're the best ones.
Mm,
Back to the friction point, like when someone wants to chat with an AI, they just want the answer to be good and they want the
mm,
experience to be fast and they don't want it to break.
yeah,
So when you give people a whole bunch of options, like each one adds just a little bit of mental friction and decision making, and
mm,
it kind of wears on people subconsciously. So if a large number of our users are like, hey, this is all great, but we want way more models, we'll
yeah.
probably keep adding models, but our bias probably is to keep it simple.
And Tina, you obviously were among the early joiners of Venice. How big is the team now, Tina? How do you see this grow? And talk a little bit about the commercialization aspects. If I'm a user, how do I pay for it now or in the future? How do you make money?
Yeah, so we have two subscription options. So you can subscribe monthly, or you can subscribe annually. The annual subscription is pretty significantly discounted. So that, again, it's another mental thing that you don't need to think about. You just sign up for your subscription and use the service. You can pay with a credit card. You can, as of today, pay with crypto. And if you are a holder of a Morpheus token, which is the decentralized compute network that Erik spoke about earlier, and you connect with a MetaMask wallet, then you get access to a pro account just by holding that token. So you don't have to spend it, you just hold it. So those are the three ways that we have put in place for people to pay for subscriptions today. Um,
Mm,
so our, MVP that's gone out and been out for, I think, yeah, it's been about 2 weeks, um, will continue to evolve. And I think that those evolutions will be fairly rapid. We get feedback all the time about features that people would like to see. We have a lot of ideas. Some of them are to ensure that people have an experience that is on par with some of the competitive apps. Some of the ideas that we have are really quite unique and I think will bring a USP to Venice over time. And so as those features continue to evolve, I think that our commercialization strategy will adopt, the evolution of that. Um, but equally, I think what we're trying to do is ensure that people have an option that is indeed private, but also is not tuned to be so, as Erik said, politically correct or parental that you feel like you're having a conversation with an adult. And so I think if people use it, they'll notice that, and we have had feedback in abundance that that's the case. So it is a differentiated product to some of the incumbents that are out there today. So I think that's important. And then equally, we want the product to be so easy to use that your parents use it, and that your average normie person that sees something on Facebook says, "Yeah, fine, I'll download that." We've made it very easy for people to test and see if they like it. So you
mm,
can sign up for a free account. Um, and you have pretty generous text and image inference allowance before you're kind of cut off for the day. Um, and we do have some users that limit out over the day because they use it quite a lot. But we do find that when people try it and they use it, that they convert to be a subscriber. So, yeah.
and Tina, what's the subscription rates right now?
So it is $8 a month or $49 a year.
Right. And maybe as we sort of wrap up the
Bargain. It's a best deal out there.
as you wrap up this conversation in the next couple of minutes, maybe the last couple of questions. We started this conversation about half an hour, 35 minutes ago by talking about both of you, particularly Erik, but also you, Tina, having a deep background the last decade in blockchain, in crypto. And you can say, yes, this is all about permissionless networks, it's about decentralization, it's about the value of that. But are there specific ways you can see how you're going to be using crypto or blockchain at Venice? We talked about obviously the Morpheus token, but in the next 12, 18 months, what are the ways, Erik, that tokens or blockchain matter for your project?
The main the main way it matters is just that you can't have a permissionless system without permissionless payment,
Hmm.
right? So a product can always be choked off, gated by a territory. Um, Users can always be blocked
Hmm.
if they have to use the banking system. The
Hmm.
banking system is a permissioned, censored network for payments
Hmm.
that works sometimes for some people, but only if you have permission from many other people.
Sure.
The reason why cryptocurrency is cool in the first place is that any person, regardless of their
Mm.
background, of where they live, just following the rules of the protocol can
Mm.
make a payment to anyone else in the world instantly at low
Mm.
cost, and no one can stop them. Right? Like that's an incredibly powerful thing.
Mm.
And so, to build a permissionless AI system, it requires a permissionless payment system. You can't do it any other way.
And Tina, the same question for you.
Yeah, so I mean, how it evolves within the Venice ecosystem, I think, there's still a number of um, things that we're trying to, work out there. But I think overall, I'm going to steal something that Eric said the other day, and he can elaborate on it. But when you think about how machines talk to each other, and
Hmm.
the idea of, a smart contract capability, the ability that you can remove these intermediaries and the smart contract can execute a transaction with a whole host of conditions, right? And pretty much they work most of the time, almost every time, right?
Mm.
DeFi contracts, things happen in the centralized crypto world that are based on typically human behavior. But in the DeFi area of the space, those contracts operate as they should. So if you look forward into the future, if we're thinking that things like our smart devices and IoT and how we're using AI, all of these machines are negotiating with each other. And if there is any type of commerce that's going to happen within that environment, it can't happen through the banking system. It just won't, right? So I think as we move toward that future of actual like digitization of the way that we share not just, money, but information,
Mm.
machines talking to each other are going to need a mechanism to be able to transact. And, as Eric says, machine can't get a driver's license to prove its identity.
Yeah, a machine can't ever open a bank account, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. Um, AI agents is really like I think the future of commerce, and if we want to get a
Mhm.
little sci-fi here, um,
Let's do it. This is the final bit of the podcast. So
get
let's go completely out there.
so like I don't know today, um,
Mhm.
100% of commerce and payments are done by humans. Um, in 10 years, I would not be surprised if humans were a minority of payments. There's going to be this Cambrian explosion of AI agents, big and small,
Mhm.
basically little software programs that are working on the internet and doing things.
Mm.
And this sounds weird now, but it's inevitable, and it's just a question of how quickly that grows and what all these things
Mm.
do. But those AI agents will become themselves economic actors.
Mm.
And a natively digital economic actor needs a natively digital asset. So they will be using cryptocurrencies, and who
Mm.
knows which ones they will be using. That doesn't really matter. Um, but that those are the rails that
Yeah.
a majority of economic action will happen in the
Yeah.
not too distant future.
I mean, repetitive or structured payments in a way machines already do, right? Like I know it's not what you're talking about, but like if I set up a direct debit or a standing payment, um, 20 years ago it would have been unthinkable, or 30 years ago. And now just like money is just zapping around from my bank account all the time without me knowing what's going on. But it's going to be really interesting when you have AI agents that actually can take within hopefully constraints decisions on our behalf. That
They'll take decisions on their own behalf, and that's where it's going to be more interesting, right?
on their
So
own behalf. So they'll be
on
like
their own behalf,
autonomous actors of their own, not just helping us.
yeah, there will be,
Yeah,
and certainly most of them will start by being
yeah,
helpers for humans.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay, I
but
was I was just thinking of human assistance, but you're going further out there and talking about independent economic agents.
yeah,
And
and this doesn't even require a concept like AGI. Like
right.
this doesn't require some super intelligence. Um,
Mm,
just as like a virus is like an independent actor, it's not
mm,
it's not conscious, but it has its own patterns and it acts
mm,
in its own way, or like certain cells and life
mm.
forms. They can be pretty dumb and still be independent and act on their own. And I think
Sure.
you're going to end up seeing um, AI agents do this, where they are earning money. They're trying to
Mm,
expand some function that they've been programmed to do, or that they've programmed each other to do,
mm.
and it's gonna be weird. And if it sounds kind of uncomfortable, that's there'll probably be good and bad that comes of this. But I think it's inevitable that it will occur.
Maybe just to pull on that thread one time before we wrap up, but where do you see like, and again, maybe I'm being anthropomorphic or whatever the word is, like I'm thinking too much from how we behave today with humans, but where are they going to be most relevant? So this is 2035, and where are these independent AI agents most relevant, most active, or what kind of activity are they doing? Is it something that we're doing today that they've taken over or they supplement, or is it completely something new? Um,
I don't know, but I would guess that they completely take over sort of the information space,
mm,
um, and basically trying to make efficient the
mm,
creation and distribution of information. And that statement wouldn't have made much sense like pre-internet. It's like,
mm,
what do you mean information? But in an
right,
internet age, so much of what happens
mm,
that humans are engaged in is the creation and distribution and monetization of information in all sorts of
yeah,
different ways. And
yeah,
there's so many inefficiencies there. And so
mm,
I would expect that there will be AI agents that are like facilitating all
mm,
sorts of interesting efficiencies of information distribution for humanity. And that could be a very beautiful thing. Like that could really enrich society to a tremendous degree.
yeah,
There are also, I'm sure, dangers to that, but that's what we'll watch and have to navigate as a society.
yeah. Uh, Tina, you get the final word. What's uh, without the
Well, I mean, I do think that, machine intelligence is going to
mm,
also be a helper and do things for us.
mm,
And I guess if that is the case, and
mm,
we're going to hand over some of the execution of the important and mundane things in our life,
mm,
together with, our wealth and
yeah,
our requests and our hopes and our desires, um, I would prefer to hand that over to a machine um, that is acting on my behalf um,
mm,
and isn't telling everybody my business. So I
mm,
think that's where the privacy thing really comes in. And I do think that, as Eric said, people say they care about privacy, but do they really? When something is easy, we kind of fall into this
yeah,
pattern. I
yeah,
think as these technologies become more important,
mm,
I think the gap between the way that we are loose with our privacy today will start to become important, right? So I think you should begin to ready yourself to care about that a little bit more. And right now
mm.
it's just your thoughts, but in the future it could be your finances, paying your parking tickets, whatever that might be. But whatever that is, I would like that information to stay secure and for me.
And maybe this is the topic for another podcast altogether, but the whole concept of privacy or privacy is going to be such an interesting one in the future because we think about privacy as like something very personal, attached to us as an individual. Like, I'm not going to have my Instagram account open to everyone, or I'm not going to be on social media, or I'm not going to want to broadcast what I'm doing so that whoever it is, the government or other people can track me. But as
Yeah,
well
but
as having AI agents, maybe the world is like, I always think like, particularly now, time is like my biggest constraint. And if I could have avatars that could just ping around the world, like next week, I think I'm supposed to be in, I wouldn't say where, but three different countries at the same time. And I was thinking, wish I could send my three avatars and I could just sit at home and hang out with my wife in Dubai and and in a
well,
world,
we talked about this when we were
Yeah.
talking about the Dubai app or the UAE app that
Mm.
has, all of your information.
Yeah.
Um, Eric, I don't know if you've seen it, but it's basically like a super app that has your healthcare records and it has, all of your visa permission, like everything about you
Yeah.
with your bank accounts and, your
Oh,
car sharing, like everything's
yeah.
in the super app. And it's very, very convenient.
Mm.
And we often say like if you have a benevolent government,
Mm.
things just work. And in Dubai, things just work, right? Everything is very
Yeah.
seamless. And
Except
the
when it rains. We
government,
need to fix our
oh,
drains. But that's another story.
but and so I think that people feel,
Yeah.
comfortable giving up all
Yeah.
that information, and that is the price of living there.
Mm.
But what happens if the government changes and is no
Sure.
longer benevolent?
Yeah.
What
Or if the database gets leaked,
it's
which it
legal.
will,
Yeah.
Yeah.
right? Every, companies large and small, governments large and small, they all get hacked.
Yeah.
And it is inevitable that that database will get leaked.
Yeah.
Um,
No, it's
Well, a
yeah.
good friend of ours, Ronit, just told me yesterday that there was a breach at the European Union, and all MEPs and anyone that ever worked for an MEP has had their data leaked.
wow. Yeah, no, I mean there are even if we get into the realm of quantum, there are, billions being spent on, on the AI space by state and parastate actors, right, to compromise systems. But I feel like we're slipping into future podcast episodes before we talk about quantum and deep fakes and other things like that. I think let's like kind of put it all together here. This is a really interesting conversation. Thank you so much, guys. If people want to follow up and track what you're doing at Venice AI, what's the best way to stay in touch? Is there like a website, a Twitter feed, I
Yeah,
don't know, some decentralized social media network you guys are on?
Venice.ai is the website.
Right.
At Try Venice on Twitter.
Hmm.
And yeah, point people to that. But
Awesome.
thanks so much for having us on.
Not at all. Thank you so much, Eric and Teana, for joining us on this latest episode of FUMO, Future of Money, brought to you by CFD, sponsored by XVC Tech, and supported by the MENA FinTech Association. Thank you and goodbye.
Thanks.